Are they trying to take on the American people? Another article, police now armed for war against returning veterans. In fact, I'm going to be covering that some on the Sunday show with our returning reporters, Sergeant Joe Biggs, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, and David Knight, who just got back from an Army training facility, which looked like it was set up for torture. That's what Biggs had seen in Afghanistan. He would deliver people for torture. Really a serious, hardcore issue. Obviously, war turns people into, turns countries into monsters. Dr. Begich, in closing here, spend about 5 minutes on what you tried to get into earlier about freeing up federal lands, freeing up lands for natives, freeing up lands for states. The amount of minerals alone that can be easily and cleanly, from what I've seen, extracted from Alaska, but is not being allowed. A, why do you think it's being suppressed? And then B, break down what this could do for our country. And I know we'll get emails or comments by different alternative energy websites going, Alex, we thought you were for alternative energy and you're a horrible person. Look, they're not letting us get those systems. We're trying to develop them. We're trying to deploy them. Everything the government pushes is kind of a patch or an act like they're doing it to actually control the industry. But we are based on minerals. We are based on oil and gas and all these other things we have. And this could be a boom for our country. So talk about it as a leading expert.
Well, first of all, you know, we're not going to convert from oil-based energy overnight. It's going to take decades. So these things are going to move forward. The United States has increased its oil and gas production dramatically from fracking, and now what's going to be happening here in Alaska, to the point where in a few years we're going to be a net exporter. Energy imports used to be about 50% of our trade deficit, with the other half pretty much China. That's changing because of energy production locally within the U.S. But taking it from the minerals perspective, you know, Alaska has a project that's the Red Dog Mine, which is actually a native-owned property and a joint venture of private industry. It produces 6% of the zinc concentrate in the world. We have one of the 10 top silver mines in southeast Alaska. But we also have major finds of rare earth minerals, which are presently primarily controlled by the Chinese, but not in Alaska. We have resources that are being drilled out and found throughout southeast Alaska and some of the interior locations that could make America free in terms of rare earth, something we absolutely need to maintain competitiveness globally. We have no railroad link to Alaska, to the rest of the United States, to the, you know, we could hook up to the Trans-Canadian Railroad and start moving these bulk commodities out of Alaska for value added in the United States. We need the railroad links established to get these minerals to market. We can't just use ports. We have some of the largest mining projects in the country coming online in the next 10 years up here. We have the Donlin Creek mine. We have the biggest one was Pebble, which has recently been sort of slowed down dramatically. Anglo-American pulled out. That's a $500 billion mine, and they still don't know the perimeters of it, and that's gold and molybdenum. Again, important minerals, you know, going forward. But Alaska has every strategic mineral in mineable quantities, in strategically large quantities, world-class sizes here in Alaska, and they are not being developed for lack of infrastructure. You know, they're talking about, you know, we need roads to the wilderness. We need roads to the mining areas, and we need infrastructure built in the same way that we built the Western United States. That kind of initiative would not only create domestic jobs, but actual jobs that result in private industry developments and the export of value-added minerals. This is where we can gain our independence again. We have trillions and trillions of cubic feet of natural gas, not including the other forms of hydrocarbons, frozen methane on the North Slope. We have enough to run the country on energy. In coal alone, we have 51% of all the known resources in the United States and 25% of the world's coal resources. We have enough coal to run the energy needs of the U.S. for 2 millennium, 2,000 years.
And let me stop you right there, because you're giving the solution. I've researched it. What you're saying is all publicly available. Your brother's the U.S. Senator. You've managed massive amounts of land there. Dad, a congressman. You know what you're talking about. But it's the same thing. America can't have jobs. We can't have factories. We can't even have service jobs. It's Agenda 21. Same thing in Western Europe and the U.S. We're not allowed to develop. we're only allowed to have government or corporate institutional jobs to capture us and enslave us under the UNESCO treaty. My issue is, why does the elite want to shut down the United States and Western Europe? Why is the elite putting in policies where the West is committing suicide, not having children? Why does the elite themselves, pretty racist people, want to destroy the West?
Well, I think there's really two reasons. One is the biggest money is being made in the developing world. I mean, think about a developed stock. It's selling at $100 and it jumps to 110. You make 10% on it. Think of a penny stock going from a penny to $1. That's the third world. That's where they want the money.
So they want to shut down development here because they already totally have enslaved the third world. Right.
And then if you look at it, they look at the U.S. mineral resource and base as a safety deposit box, because they can leave this stuff undeveloped while they exploit everyone else in the world until they get thrown out or nationalized, and then pull back into the United States and develop those resources at the point in which we're dumbed down and numbed down, and then they can continue to.
I was told that by a high-level elitist. I've never heard that before except from you. Were you given that from your high-level sources?
You know, that's the reality. I mean, just look at how it unfolds. Yeah, that's what everyone sees. If you really look at the bigger picture, it's just a shift in the market. They're going to go and exploit where they make the biggest margins and the least regulations, where they can corrupt government that's openly corrupt. I mean, every one of these governments, even our own government, think about it. We have a government that takes money around the world on pallets and plane loads to bribe people. It's well known. Kidnap people, torture people, invade your mail, kick down your doors. You don't even know people like this unless you're listening to this broadcast in prison. You know, the fact of the matter is, this is a criminal government, and they've done everything that the elite wants to restrict us, restrain us, and keep us down, because we can make the difference. We can make the difference in being the light that our founding fathers expected of us, not to be a dominant force in the world, but to be a light where people want to emulate what we have here, what we do here, in their own self-interest, not imposed upon them by some external force.
And I want to quantify this. You know, one shipment was $12 billion, another $30-something billion to Iraq. And they use it not just to buy off local officials, but to buy off our own military, where they would give a sergeant $100 grand or somebody else $1 million, a general, and then say, by the way, you stole that money. You better do what we say and ship these drugs back. This is a corrupting. So instead of building something to rise in society that raises the whole society, if you're part of the criminal gang, you get ahead. And it creates dark ages, folks. We need to be going the opposite direction. Let me ask you this. Are we turning the tide? I know there's a big awakening. Is it enough? What does your gut tell you the timeline is? What's going to happen? You're probably one of the smartest guys in general knowledge, Dr. Begich. What do you see happening?
I think the tide is rising, and I don't think it takes 51%. The American Revolution started with 6% of the people, they say, were in favor of that when it began, and thank God there was that 6%. Today, with the ability to communicate globally, all of us, even in this broadcast right now, we can make a bigger difference if only 1% of us wake up and begin to act in what we believe to be right and true. It doesn't take a mass. It takes a few. There is way more engaged right now than is necessary to create the next revolution, the next evolution in human thinking. That's what's going on right now. The tide will turn. We're not going to give up the fight. There are too many of us in it for too long, and there's too many of us coming up and be from behind. And I think that's the fifth column, is the fifth column of freedom. It's those of us that still engage this process and refuse to lay down in front of the tank and get run over. We're going to take control of those tanks again. We're going to take control of this country and all of our countries, because corruption is what needs to be snuffed out. The elite needs to be recognized for who they are and what they are, and recognize that the change has to come, and it is coming. I believe the tide is turning. Just keep in the fight. Don't give up, even in the worst circumstances. Those are the things that give us the scar tissue to continue and the strength to carry on.
Well, that's right. Beautifully said. Again, we carry most of your books and videos. Folks can also find them on your site, which I'll give people. Are you working on anything new? What do you focus on this day over at earthpulse.com, Dr. Nick Begich?
Well, we're working on a few things. A few of our electronic devices are coming out in the next few years. We've got some really interesting things for mineral and vitamin deficiencies, diagnoses. We have some great things coming in the field of health, which is an area that I'm very interested in, because strong bodies, strong minds.
And I want to work with you on that. I want to work with you on that.
You bet. In fact, I'm hoping to get down to Austin at some point and spend a little time with you personally, and I'm hoping to get down there sometime this fall.
Come on down. You're welcome. We'll pay for your hotel, my friend. All right. Well, bottom line, look at Obama, a false messiah. But it doesn't work anymore. People wake up to these puppets faster and faster. And, you know, I complain until the public's dumbed down. Congress has as low as a 6% approval rating now. That's really got to worry the establishment.
Oh, I think so, too. You know, you're talking about the establishment. You know, I got to leave on one point. It's the Federal Reserve. And, you know, my brother's the only Democrat that signed on to audit the Federal Reserve. And when Bernanke called him and screamed at him over it, he said, hey, you internally audit yourself all the time. What are you worried about? They're worried. People are looking. It's not just about